Welcome to our 2025 winter webinar Lunch and Learn series. We are running through helpful lessons and activities to teach different grade levels about agriculture. We started our webinar series with tips for hosting schools on farms. That has been very well received, and we are following up each week with providing the best lessons for different grade levels so you can meet the Kentucky academic standards. Teachers really like that. How you can help them teach their content for their testing will be absolutely welcome. Last week, we addressed third and fourth grade, which there is a big tie to science because they are tested the first time in science in fourth grade in Kentucky public schools. We're going to talk about fifth and sixth grade today, and specifically fifth grade. That is when they are tested on social studies. So we will focus on some of those items and then also talk about some of the things that may be good to showcase for our sixth graders. Now, there are some schools in Kentucky where the elementary grades go up to sixth grade, or sixth grade could be in a middle school. But we have found that there are many counties that host an agriculture day for the sixth graders. So we wanted to include them on this webinar as well. And oh, look, we have Julie joining us. So I'd like to welcome her to our webinar. Julie, I'm getting ready to share my screen. So we can show all of our listeners, our watchers, where to find these lessons. If this is your first time joining us, our website is teachkyag.org. We try to have the most important things on this um, on the home page. So our most recent lessons and activities are here in this kind of blue-green section. This is where you can find the recordings of each of the different videos. So this was last week's, and then we have links to the different lessons. So science is huge for third and fourth grade, and it's so easy to connect agriculture to many of these academic standards in science for those grades. But we're going to start from the top because we're going to look for fifth and sixth grade today. So I'm going to click on curriculum. I'm going to scroll down to the section that lists lessons by grade and Kentucky Academic Standard. Click on fifth grade. Now, I did say that there was a stronger focus on social studies in fifth grade, so I am going to start there. And of course, career studies, that's the easy thing to do with any grade, especially this age group. So you can kind of see their academic standards there, and that gives you some ideas. I just wanted to make that note before we dive into some of the specific lessons. But fifth grade social studies. You will see that there is a very strong tie to history and economics. So those are the two big themes in fifth grade. Now, if you are in a farm setting, some of these economics games may be difficult to play on a farm. So I will show you the bushels or bust. You may be able to modify that. We do have a game that you could play on a farm. You just may have to write all of the answers on a big board. I have done that myself. But you can kind of look at this. We do have a few copies of this game available. It is great starting in fifth grade. It hits a lot of different standards. It hits math standards, but it talks about supply and demand. It talks about the things that farmers cannot um, cannot um, manage. So there's a lot of risk involved in farming. So it's a game of chance for sure. You can print all of the things that you will need for this activity, but we also made a Google Slide version of it as well. I think this game would be fun just to go through because it would definitely help a farmer. It will help a farmer kind of field conversations around this topic and encourage them to talk about the things they can control, the things they can't control on the farm. Uh, and then this is where you can find a lot of the vocabulary that might be good to introduce to the fifth graders and even sixth graders. So you've got your main ideas in vocabulary. You can talk about business, risk, open market, price, supply, demand, cost, profit, limited resources, types of resources. And then we explain some of the terms that are used on the farm, such as yield, bushels, an acre. How big is an acre? Well, it's slightly smaller than a football field. That is a measurement that, it may be good to explain to them because they may not have any idea what an acre is, but most people have an idea what a football field is. We have some helpful videos there and then a video on how to play this game. But this is a digital version of this. I guess if you're going into a classroom, you can pull this up. And you could also encourage the kids to use their Chromebooks to play this game. There is a budget sheet, but it walks them through the different steps, and you will have to put this in slideshow mode for it to work. But they move through the game. It tells them what to put on their budget sheet. They'll get a copy of that and what to write on their budget sheet. So they have a couple options. Then it's going to take you to the second one. And this is random. So they're just going to click a random card here. I think I always want to pick that one. So I'm going to pick something different this time. Okay, so this one, the weather was fair, yield doesn't change. So in this game, you'll see the yield change, you'll see cost change, and you'll see, or the price change and then the cost change. I didn't want to spend too much time on this because there already is a video, but I did want to show you that there is a digital version of this now. We have always shared the actual game pieces with the cards and the dice at our workshops, but now we do have this digital version, which could be very helpful for some because little room for error in taking the kids through the game. So as they move through the season, it's very similar. There's risks. So now we pick too hot and dry. So it gives you all the instructions that you need for that. And as they go through the game, they're going to see their yields go up and down. They're going to see the prices go up and down, and then their costs. Then at the end, they'll calculate their results. So I've always enjoyed doing this. When I've gone to agriculture days for sixth graders, I think it's always good to have something that's very hands-on or game oriented instead of just lecturing or talking to the kids. So I'll bring a writing pad or a dry erase board, and I will kind of make a budget sheet in front of them, and we'll go through the game that way. And then we have a contest because in those situations, you'll have so many different groups that will come through, and then they can compare how they did with the other classes. And at the end of the day, I'll give a prize to the class that did the best. And of course, it's chance. There's a few things they can do to improve their situation. Yeah. And then, of course, if you have an opportunity for more math connections, those are there. And you can share these with the teacher for sure. That's that. Cash cow is another one that works pretty well because there's a supply and demand element in there. I'm not going to spend too much time on that one. Just because I feel that's one that we share with a lot of folks. But I did want to move on to the lessons that I think are the most applicable for fifth grade, and we're gonna scroll down and talk about history. So talk about Kentucky settlers. And then My Kentucky Home is such a great lesson that talks about geography, um, and then history, cultural perspectives, environment, and how that impacted where settlers landed. So you can find presentations, lessons and worksheets. If you are having fifth graders to your farm, I think it's good to point some of these things out if you want know the history of your farm. There are so many of our farms that are now in their ninth and 10th generation. We have farm friends that are in LaRue County, Hodgenville area, kind of in here. They were neighbors to the Lincolns, so Abraham Lincoln's family, and they bought that farm before the Lincolns moved in, which is really cool. But we've got all kinds of great resources. You can talk about what water resources are available, how the land impacts the farm, and what is grown on that farm. Again, anything that's historical would be good to talk to the kids about. The topography, markets, and that's a way to work in, the economic side of farming and things that, the farm comes up against. Do they have storage for their grain so they can hold on to it when prices are not as good?
Is my thing working now?
It is.
I was able to join on my iPad. So I think a good thing too, to tie in at that age is farm tools and equipment,
Oh,
because they talk a lot about in fourth and fifth grade, they talk about like settlers through like the colonial period. And it's a very big push in general to have STEM connections. And so we can talk about the difference between tools and what they would have used traditionally on the farm, and then show them here are things that we use in place of that. So where before we would have used a hand tool for this, this is the machine that does it. Or if we used a horse or a mule or something for pulling, here's the tractor that we use instead, and kind of the tools that are used, because that's a really good social studies connection as well.
Oh yeah, thanks. That's great. The tools. There is a farm in Ohio County, so that's in Western Kentucky. The Luttrells, they have hosted an agriculture day on their farm for 25 years.
That's cool.
And I always like to visit because they had all of this antique farm equipment sitting around. It was something that they do. They collect it.
Well, and kids are really interested in like how, because they're surrounded by technology. So if you, not necessarily that you could hand them something, but if you had somebody showing them like, look, I had to swing this like a thresher or whatever, we beat it to get the wheat off of they're interested in things like that. I showed them a video, some fifth graders, a video of a man racing to cut um with the scythe. I was either the scythe or the sickle, a hand scythe, and he was racing against a weed eater to cut, and it was showing the difference. Like, and they were so into that, just because it's something they don't see a lot of things done by hand, and they don't realize the amount of work that went into that. Because we are so blessed to just live in a world where most things are automated for us, and it's a click of a button or turn of a key.
Yeah. Well, even with adults, we know that there is a trend to take pictures of old tools and implements and say, guess what this was used for?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So even if you're not in a a school scenario or environment, you can absolutely talk about some of these things that are in this lesson. I always love this map that shows what Kentucky looked like before European settlement. Look at all the forests. So the dark green are heavy forest. The light green is woodland. Of course, and we know this area of central Kentucky here in the bluegrass is where all of our horse farms are. And those are really the areas of Kentucky that were first settled in there. And in these areas where they didn't have to clear as much land. But all of these wetlands, in Western Kentucky, that's something that we probably don't think about. And then this gray is prairie. So there were a lot of roaming animals. And of course, we know how fertile the land is in these areas. And that is in part due to what was going on with that land many, many years ago because of the nutrients moving through. But talk about, why the area of Kentucky that you are in was a good place to set up a farm and a good place to live.
And why it's good for that particular type of farm.
Yes.
What about the land supports it? Because we know, like out in eastern Kentucky, they're mountains and hilly land is much different type of farming than what's going on out in the wetlands in the west, and sort of the bluegrass region having just that different topography is a great connection, and specifically like why your farm works on the land it is, or maybe even challenges that you had to overcome, like something on your land that was a difficulty that you had to figure out a way to work around. Any type of problem solving is really good for kids of that age, seeing if they can come up with solutions or talking about solutions to problems. Adaptability and things like that are really good to talk about.
Yeah. Now this is my favorite lesson to give, even to adults. That just talks about geographical differences, how natural resources play into, how markets have changed over the years. Um, so Kentucky has not been known as a great place to grow wheat because we're further south. We have really humid springs, and there's a lot of disease and weed and insect pressure on our wheat because it likes cooler, drier climates. So our researchers at the University of Kentucky have had to figure out how to improve varieties that can grow better in Kentucky because of that work, they were able to really improve wheat yields over time. And because of Kentucky's location, the rivers, and then now having a good supply of wheat, they put a mill in Hopkinsville in Christian County to collect all of that wheat and turn it into flour. And then right next door, they put a food processing plant that buys the flour and turns it into baking mixes. So that is just showing how all the elements of, economics and production are working together um, for specialization and, making things work in our economy. And some of the same thing could be said for our timber industry. It said there's not a single county that does not benefit from timber, but you could ask your students, where do you think most of the furniture shops are located in Kentucky? Well, over here in Western Kentucky, because they have a good supply of hardwood lumber to make those things.
And then from there, you can talk to kind of go into conservation and land, because you will have kids that will say, well, we cut down all the trees. Why, what happens? And so you can talk about how the standards that you have, to make sure that you're replacing things and that there's plans for that, and that farming and agriculture is a way to take care of the land. We don't just use it until it's destroyed. We use it and take care of it at the same time so that it can sustain. That sustainability piece is important.
Yeah, and that is so important because I think for so many years, myself included, I remember when there was a big push, when we were talking about, you wanted to start talking about reducing your use of certain products. It was all, save the trees, we don't need to cut down all of these trees for things. But there is not a single industry that doesn't think about long-term sustainability and where their natural resources are going to come from. So the timber industry has looked ahead and they are planting trees. So if they take trees down, they put trees back. They plant more trees than they're taking to ensure that they have a supply of that resource. Think about uh, fishing, and even uh, fish and animals that are wild caught. There is a plan in place to ensure that they are protecting the future supply. And that could be, they don't take animals of a certain size, they put those back. How can they help, the reproduction of those animals?
And
So
some
they,
kids will
yeah.
really have a connection to that if their family does like hunting and fishing, because they'll understand that, you can only hunt certain things at certain times of the year. There's some things you have to go into a lottery to even be able to get a license to hunt for. That those are things that the Fish and Wildlife Department, they'll be familiar with that because that's something that their families do.
Yes, absolutely. So this is just a really good lesson to hit a lot of different social studies aspects. And like I said, and any of this information can be worked into a farm visit to help, um, you know, explain a lot of these things. So they can kind of see it in action, economics in action, and the use of our natural resources in action. So that's definitely one to check out. There are copies of this map right here on our in our store that you can purchase. There's a paper version, there's a larger vinyl version of this map. It's a really good tool to have on a farm or in a school.
And in general, kids need as much practice looking at maps as possible. They are not good at it. They don't understand directions. They don't. So even if you're just referencing it and having them point, and talk about areas and moving west, moving east, they struggle with that. Even, when I was in middle school, those kids still had issues with that. And just kind of seeing Kentucky as a whole, they don't have that good overwhelming, or not over, but like the overview, the overarching picture. They're very much, here's what's around me. And so kind of giving them that bigger world view is any opportunity to do that is really good.
Speaking of data, if you are going into a classroom situation, and we have seen many of our Ag Literacy Network members use this, this is an interactive version of the map that Julie helped us put together. So you can click on a county and it takes you to the data for that county. I had someone ask me just the other day if I could tell them the top two commodities for every county. And I said, well, I can point you to the resource that can. So you click on your county and it will bring up all of the pertinent information that was collected through our Census of Agriculture in 2022. It will tell you how the farmland is used in your county, the top selling products, how much money each of these different things brought to the county.
And this hits so many of their math standards. They struggle so much with looking at data in different formats and understanding, just interpreting what does that mean, what inferences can you draw, what predictions, how can you use that data to help make plans. That is huge for them. And this is in a really easy to read, very attractive format as well. So it's not overwhelming lists of Excel spreadsheets that it's put in a very kid friendly format.
Yes. And so this is fully interactive. Even the things on here, so you can click on the different regions. This provides a PowerPoint on the different regions. You can also click to get information about forestry, which we talked a little bit about. So lots of things to click on.
And all of our virtual field trips are linked over in the key as well. So
yeah. So another resource to definitely check out for your 5th and 6th graders if you're visiting those. And I need to go find our the data lesson.
with all the county profiles where they can.
So there's so many ways you can get to our resources. So we have it by grade level and then here by topic. Social studies is where I go. And then here's our data lessons. So there's actually worksheets in here, and there are questions provided based on grade level.
And they're not, I know when you hear the word worksheet, you might think like sit and get, but all of the things that they do in here give them opportunities to kind of get up and move. We have questions where when they're looking at, if each of them are looking at a county, they have to get up and kind of put themselves in order based on the data in different ways. And so there's movement, there's talking, which is what you like, when you go into a classroom. You never just want to talk at kids the whole time. So there's opportunities for them to do, opportunities for you to give information, opportunities for them to share. It's not all writing. They color things. They're looking at, there's a lot there. So you're not just going to be standing in front of them and for 40 minutes feeling like, you're just talking at them.
Yeah, we love this one.
Mm-hmm. Even our adults love that one.
Yes. And it would be wrong for me to not also mention that if you are going into a class situation that you need to see our My Kentucky Farm activity. So you click on the Kentucky Farm Field Trips and then scroll down to the bottom. We have this activity called My Kentucky Farm. You can print these out. It is on 11 by 17 paper, and they're given a grid. This is supposed to represent 100 acres. They get to decide how to use their land. They can draw everything in, or they can use this little stamps that we have. Those can be printed out and cut and pasted on their grid.
I did this at a summer camp with it was literally a group of kids from first grade to fifth grade, and then there were two high schoolers in there who were kind of like helping and leading, and they sat down and did it too. They all were very into this activity, and it was interesting to see kind of the range, because it also gives them an opportunity to do some art and creativity because they get to name their farm, they get to design a logo for the farm. You could have them look at some farms first and kind of see, you know, if you're talking about your farm, you can kind of show them, here's how my farm is laid out and why I picked where different things go. You know, what do you want to grow? What do you, and one of the older girls was really, hers was really cool because she just went straight for, she didn't care about growing. Hers was a straight up horse farm. She wanted to offer, you know, opportunities for people to come and do stuff with horses, people all the way from who don't ever work with horses, so like equine therapy she talked about, and then up to like people who actually rode and did um, uh, competitions and stuff. So the way, you know, you can take this as far and as in depth as you need to based on the age level, and they really like it.
Yeah, this is definitely a good, if you're visiting a classroom,
Mm-hmm.
a great activity to take. And you can work it in with that My Kentucky home provides what I need if you want to give them some scenarios. So if you're going to go back into the classroom, if you're a visiting educator and you're going back into the classroom, on maybe on a monthly basis, you could do the My Kentucky Home PowerPoint and kind of county exploration, how the land was used. And then the next time you bring the My Kentucky Farm activity in and you put them in groups and you let them pick one of these scenarios out of a hat. And this helps them it gives them some parameters for their farm that they're going to create. So let's say that their farm is in Western Kentucky, it's close to poultry processing plant. Uh, you're close to an ethanol plant and a flour mill, and your land is flat. How would that impact? How would those situations impact what you decided to do with your farm versus being in the middle of an urban community where you've got a lot of people that live around you. People are interested in local food. They just want an experience, whether it's riding horses or petting on animals. How would that impact what you did with your 100 acres?
And I think that is a really good, I love these scenarios because it shows them the balance between dreaming big in your vision and then what you can do based on what the land will provide for you, because it always goes back to the land. You might want to have the best watermelon farm on the planet, but if you've got rocky mountain range land, you're not making watermelons. And so it kind of makes them understand, you know, there's a balance there. Farmers just can't farm whatever they want. If they really want to farm something that's not capable, then they have to go to the place that has land that will support that. They can't just make it work.
Yeah. So this is just a super, super fun activity.
And they
Uh,
can do that in groups too. It doesn't have to be every single kid. They can totally plan a farm together and share.
So this also works into, we have a lesson book right here, and that My Kentucky home provides what I need is within this. And I thought it would be also good just to point out that there is a set of lessons that talk about energy transfer. So if you want to get to the science side of our academic standards for fifth and sixth grade, you can find them here. And it's about ecosystems and how energy is transferred within the ecosystem. How is a farm its own ecosystem? So this would be really great to introduce at a farm field trip is let them pick out all of the different parts of the farm ecosystem. Of course, typically in school, we're talking about a desert ecosystem or a pond ecosystem or an ocean
Yeah, like the different
ecosystem.
biomes.
But they see farm ecosystems if, they're driving around their county. Um, of course, if they're in an urban area, they may not, but a lot of kids are seeing these things where they live and they're managed ecosystems. So you can talk about those things and then how you manage your resources. How do you protect your animals from predators and insects? Because those are things within the ecosystem that may impact what you do on the farm.
Yeah, and even just identifying the different components like living, non-living, and dead, like all of these things, you know, they all you have all of them in every ecosystem ever. You have those three different things and how they work together. Um, when I taught fourth grade, so fourth and fifth grade standards were very similar. That was a huge one. They didn't call it dead; they called it once living. So you had living, non-living, and once living. So yeah, but yeah, that was a big part of it.
So your role as a volunteer educator or a farm educator, if you're doing a farm field trip, it may be easier for a teacher in fifth grade to provide the social studies, but because they're not tested on the science, they may say, hey, this is a great opportunity for a volunteer educator or a field trip to bring in some of the science that we're not tested on. So including these things on a farm field trip would be really, really good. So, it gives the background information of the different, parts of the farm ecosystem, even down to the decomposers and how important they are to the ecosystem. And then you've got some examples of this flow of energy and matter. Um, and you can, kind of talk about that. What are the animals on the farm that can eat both plants and animals? I always think it's interesting the commercials that talk about, chickens. Our chickens are only fed a plant-based diet. Well,
They eating bugs.
if they're in nature and allowed to run around, they are going to eat anything that they want.
They eat bugs. They're eating worms.
Yeah, I've seen them fight over a lizard before.
They are omnivores.
Yes. But they need to be protected for sure. Some more than others. So I think that's another good one to introduce. The moving of the energy throughout. There's a little activity that goes along with that. They can make some farm food chains. You start with sunlight. Let's see if it's going to pull up. Here we go. And then you've got the different components, different organisms that are on the farm, and you can make that food chain or a food web. You can get strings out. You can just have them put them up on the front of a table. But it's like who's eating what, and where does that energy come from? Of course, we know it all starts with the sunlight. And plants are able to make their own food. And then you have your consumers that are sharing some of that. They're using it for their energy and then can transfer that even further to other organisms. So just another tool for you to talk about the different science aspects for fifth and sixth grade. And we list all of the academic standards here. I know several teachers have told us they appreciate that they list all of these standards because even if they're doing these things in the classroom, they can print the standards out. And if the principal happens to come in and saying, how does this help them learn what they're supposed to be learning, they can show them um, that
And if
list.
you're on your farm, you can show them some of the things you do, especially for your fifth and sixth grade, a little bit higher level. So like if you do any type of soil testing or chemical or water type of things, those are great science connections too. So that they understand it's not just put it out there and hope it grows. Like there's a lot more involved than just cross your fingers. We actively do stuff to our environments to make it grow better on our farms.
Yeah, so talk about that a little more, just how important it is. I briefly touched on careers at the start and said, that almost any learning activity can be tied to careers. But then I was also thinking, like with the bushels or
Mm-hmm.
bus game, having something that's very active for the kids to do. Uh, what do you, as a teacher, Julie, how important is the hands-on aspect and the career aspect of the learning experiences
So
that are
careers,
provided?
it is so it's crazy to me because when we were kids, it was what do you want to do when you grow up, and that's fine. But most schools when they leave fifth grade and start going into sixth, and seventh and on, they already are having them choose like learning paths for future careers. They are thinking about these things at a much younger age. What the classes that they're going to um, are different depending on what they think. And then by high school, a lot of times they're in career paths like I can't think what they're called, but especially in like JCPS schools and stuff. So to have them talking about those things much earlier, just to get them to understand the different types of things that are out there, because for a lot of our kids, they don't have a concept of what modern farming looks like. If they hear farm, they think older, probably man, maybe a white man, overalls and a shovel. That is their conception of what farming is. And there's so much more to it than that, as we know. Like even giving them those opportunities to see all the different types of jobs that stem from agriculture. And we actually have a website that does a good job of showing those different careers too. But to have them understand, if this is something if you're not interested in sitting in an office all day, agriculture could be a great path for you. That doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be the farmer, but you're going to be, out working with people. You're talking to people, working on land, going places. If you're tech savvy, we need people in, communications about agriculture. Where do you think commercials come from about, beef and all those things that you see that it doesn't have to be, it's not just a one thing. There are many opportunities in the agriculture industry for careers. And then on the other thing you said about just having that hands-on, any type of hands-on learning, it always makes the connection stronger in their brain. If there is a physical movement along with the learning, those things are stronger. Kids cannot sit and be talked to for a lot amount of time. It's shorter than what you would think. If you think they can handle 10 minutes, they probably can only handle 5. One that has to do with just how we consume information these days. Our social media, it's very quick, so their focus is very short. But also, if you think about when you're going to a farm field trip or having a guest speaker in, you want something different than what they're doing every day. And if they're sitting in a classroom every day, you want this to be a special thing for them. You want them to have the opportunity to do things that maybe they don't get to do. So getting up, moving around, talking to each other, giving opportunities to share out. Your older kids are better about staying on topic than if younger kids will raise their hand and say something about anything, and it can be hard to keep them on topic. But your older kids will do a better job of talking about what you're on the focus of. And even just opportunities to talk to each other about the learning. So not just, share to the group, but turn to your partner and explain what I just told you that this farm machine does. Because when they're talking about the learning, it's also making that connection. And like I said, anytime they can touch, manipulate, feel, physically do something is great. Even if it's just a matter of, we're going to touch different soil samples. What does this one feel like? The simplest things that allow them some sort of tactile, opportunity, they love. They love. Hold this tool. Maybe not, if it's a dangerous tool, but like touch this tool, feel this animal hide if you can't touch the animal. And movement. And if you're on a farm, that's much easier because you're going to be walking and showing and things like that. But even in the classroom, and if you're not sure, if you're worried about how to do those things, talk to the teacher before you come in and say, this is the information I have to share. What would be the best way? And they can even help you put together a way that would be better in the room. They can show, have the kids in groups. They can kind of dictate that for you. But any type of opportunity for movement, talking, connections with others is going to be key.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that. Real quick, I just wanted to share where this is going to be our last webinar. Originally, we said we were going to do this into March, but we decided to combine the grades just so there wasn't too much repetition. So if you go to teachkyag.org, and then under programs and lessons, educator workshops, we've got all of our webinars linked up here. So this is where we're going to link today's webinar, 5th and 6th grade lessons. You'll be able to view that and the kind of suggested lessons that we have for each of these. If you want to check out all of our demo videos, click there and it will take you to our YouTube playlist with all of our different demo videos. And we have 33 videos in there now. After today, it'll be 34. So you'll see how-tos on many of our resources that we have available. Some of them are just digital now, so you can just print out all the pieces and use them as you would like. You can have them, you can laminate them. And then you'll get some other ideas for activities. If you want to buy some mortar and pestles, that is a great activity. Let them grind up some wheat or corn and see how hard it is compared to the machines that we have today. So all kinds of good ideas and how-tos on all of our lessons and activities. So thank you so much for hanging out with us. I know several of you have come to several of these webinars over the last few weeks. We appreciate it. Oh, and there's the dog. We appreciate everything that you do to help us teach Kentucky agriculture. Just we couldn't do this without you. So just know how much we appreciate you. And we hope you continue doing what you're doing. So thank you again, and I hope you have a great day and a great weekend.